Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Kansas City Royals. We are at the start of the 2029 offseason. The Royals missed the playoffs this past season for the first time since 2024. So that was obviously incredibly disappointing. We're heading into a busy offseason. We've already traded away our star closer, Austin Roberts, who was heading into his final year of arbitration, was expected to make somewhere between $16 to $18 million, and felt that that was going to be just too much money for the Royals to put into a guy who's probably only going to pitch 60 to 80 innings a year. Part of the reason, although we didn't know it at the time, that we like that move even more is that our budget was just cut by $8 million a year. So you can see right now we've got no money available for free agents, no money available for extensions. We did get some decent talent back for Roberts, probably not even talent, but we got Gordon Graceffo, who we think profiles as a above average starting pitcher for us. He's expected to make about $4.6 million this upcoming season in arbitration, and we think that Graceffo can potentially slot into the role that Trevor Rogers has filled for us the last couple years. We need to decide on what to do with an $18 million team option on Roberts, and given that he's going to be 32 next year, he's already fragile as far as his injury proneness. He missed all of 2027 with an injury, and then he missed most of the past season with an injury also, and wasn't as effective this past year with a 4.66 ERA in the 56 innings that he did pitch. We're going to likely be moving on from Mr. Rogers, and we think that Graceffo could potentially give us everything that Rogers would give us at this point in his career, given that he's so banged up at this point and also getting a little bit older. We also did explore potentially trading away both Zach DeCenzo and Peyton Williams, who are headed into, in Williams' case, a relatively expensive arbitration year. In DeCenzo's case, a more reasonable arbitration year at this point. But have not made a move on either of them, and obviously a lot depends on what we end up doing with Rogers to free up some money. And then we've also got a team option on Aaron Ashby. And on Aaron Ashby, we've got a team option for $4 million for him. Getting expensive for a left-handed reliever, but we have kind of found with him, he joined us for his second stint with the team this past year and had a brilliant season with a 1.99 ERA over almost 100 innings pitched. Some teams have used him as a starter over the years, and when he's been a starter, he hasn't really been all that effective. We have used him primarily as a reliever, and you can see the evidence right here. Kansas City, he's pitched 386 innings, only 2 starts with a 2.63 ERA, 73 FIP minus. You look at his career in Milwaukee and Seattle, who have used him primarily as a starter or totally as a starter, and his ERAs with those teams are 5.12 and 4.97 with less than average ERA pluses and below average FIP minuses. So he is an excellent left-handed reliever. The problem is, in my view, he's been miscast as a starter for much of his career. So we are going to actually go ahead and exercise that option. So we are going to bring him back for $4 million. Trevor Rogers, $18 million option or a $2 million buyout. He's been a huge part of our team ever since we picked him up almost 6 years ago in a trade with Miami. He has been our ace for most of that time period, but has suffered the 2 major injuries that I've already talked about. When you look at his career with us, he's really, in 6 seasons with the team, he's only qualified for the ERA title once. So that kind of puts his injuries into perspective. He missed half the season in 2024, relatively complete season in 25, complete season in 2026 when he won the Cy Young Award, missed all of 2027, healthy for most of 28, and then missed more than half of 2029. So given that he's going to be 32 years old, he's suffered, 3 pretty significant injuries over the 6 years with us. We're not going to bring him back for $18 million next year. Definitely hurts a little bit to let him go after we traded away so much to get him, but at this point in his career, I don't think he's an $18 million pitcher. And the good news by moving on from him, you can see that actually gives us a very small amount of money for free agents and opens up some money for extensions for us too once we get past salary arbitration. So that is going to be our next focus. Those of you who have watched before know I spend a lot of time kind of thinking about what to do with the arbitration players. If I want to bring somebody back, I will generally try to offer them a little bit less than they're expecting to earn for the next season to get them signed. Some players certainly look to try to sign to long-term contracts, and then if it's someone that we're going to move on from, we'll try to trade them away and extract whatever possible value that I can for them, but won't get into all of the gory details on all of the players this time around. And we made 1-year offers to all of the pitchers who are arbitration eligible. The position players, it's a little bit different. There's DeCenzo and Williams, who I've mentioned. Still want to kind of think about what to do with them. And then Stephen Paulini, who's been a relatively important outfielder for us the last several years, is in line to make about $2.8 million. He kind of profiles as a average-ish bat. He can play a competent left or right field. When you look at the course of his career, 95 OPS plus, 96 WRC plus. So average hitter at best, looking to be making $2.8 million as a 4th or 5th outfielder for us. I think that's starting to get a little unreasonable. And we do have on our team several younger outfielders, Jason Dominguez, Juan Pablo Correa, Jackson Chorio, Elijah Lambros, Henry Ramos, Nazir Millet, even Will Taylor if we decide to keep him around. I think there's plenty of more cost-effective options to kind of fill a backup outfielder role than him. So we are actually going to look to see what, if anything, we can get in a trade for Mr. Paulini at this point, rather than paying him, $2.8-ish million a year next year. And there's not a lot being offered to us for Paulini, perhaps not surprisingly. I think we're going to try to work with the Cardinals on a trade for Sabine Ceballos. Not much of a bat and just kind of a average-ish glove. Can play, third and short, can play all the outfield positions, and certainly looks like he could learn to play second and first also. So I just like him as a potential utility player if we have some injuries. And the thing I really like about him is that he's got 2 more option years left, so we can trade for him and kind of stash him in AAA. And if we have a few injuries in our infield or outfield and just kind of need a body, he can serve that role for us. Not all that exciting, but I'd rather be paying him $700,000 than Stephen Paulini $2.8 million a year at this point. So we are going to go ahead and see if we can maybe get a little more out of them. I'm sure they're not going to give us the top prospect in the game, but maybe we can get the Cards to throw in a little bit of cash. Yeah, they do like it with $1 million, so let's see if we can get $3 million, which they probably won't, but then we'll work back from there. Wow, they really give us a decent amount of cash. I like that even more. We're going to take as much cash as we can get. Yeah, he's not going to go to $5 million. Will he go to 4.5? 4.2. 4 million flat. 3.8. 3.6. 3.4. Come on, dude. Just give us a little bit of cash. All right, $3.25 million plus Ceballos for Steven Paulini. I think that's a great trade for us. Free up a little bit extra money and also get some cash. And then right now, one of the other things I always focus on this time of year is players who have option years left. And we don't really have an infielder at AAA who's a major league-ish quality player who has any option years left at this point. So having Ceballos on the AAA roster with the ability to bring him up to the majors is important. So feel pretty good about this trade. We're going to go ahead and complete it. And looking at our pending free agents, Jose Barrero, Nicky Lopez, Reese McGuire have all been with us for a while, as has Trevor Rogers. Lopez made it to free agency last year, and then we brought him back for a year. He's still looking for an average of $9 million a year on the open market, so that's clearly not going to work. Let's just see what Rogers is looking for on the open market now. He still wants the $18 million a year that we were going to pay him, and he wants it for 3 years. So there's a part of me that wants to submit a qualifying offer to Rogers just to get the draft pick, but given that we didn't want to bring him back for $18 million and we've already paid him $2 million to get out of the contract, the risk of him accepting that $18.9 million qualifying offer is a little high for me. So not going to try to get too cute with that. We won't make him the offer. And then Josh Lowe and Colby White, who we both picked up at the trade deadline, are not eligible for any type of compensation as free agents this year. So you can see here we've started to open up some more money, getting rid of Rogers, trading away Paulini. Still have to decide what we want to do with Peyton Williams and Zach DeCenzo. Looking at potential free agents at this point. Some big-time players out there, but big-time players looking for big money in the case of Vlad Guerrero Jr., Carlos Correa, Matt Olson. Some big-time pitchers, too. Interesting. Jonah Don, supposedly only looking for about $1.8 million. Be a pretty solid right-handed reliever at that point who could start in a pinch. I don't think with that mediocre changeup we'd really want him to be starting, but he could be somebody interesting to go after to build out our bullpen, the back end of the pitching staff. You know, thinking about the batters who are out there, it's big money. Shortstop is going to be a hole for us. So somebody like Correa is interesting, but we're not going to have $33 million a year to pay him. We could potentially go after somebody like Tim Anderson. You know, the issue is coming off a torn labrum. He's already fragile. He's going to turn 37 the middle of next year. He's got slightly better range than Bobby Witt Jr. if we were to slide him over to short, but honestly, Bobby Witt Jr. is better at everything else. You know, I just don't see him being a huge upgrade for us for that amount of money. If Lopez gets more reasonable than $9 million, we could certainly bring him back. But I don't want to be paying Nicky Lopez $9.5 million at this point. And then Correa clearly would be incredible, but we're not going to have the money to bring him back, unfortunately. Or not bring him back, bring him on board, period. So as I'm looking at the options out there, you know, we can't afford Matt Olson. Maybe we could swing a Brian Anderson, but at this point in his career, how much better is Brian Anderson than Peyton Williams as a hitter? I know in the last episode I was ready to just dump Peyton Williams, and it's still possible. But as I've talked about, although he's awful defensively, he has over the course of his career put up a 117 WRC plus. I mean, he's been a very consistently above average offensive player. I don't think he's a long-term answer for us. But he may be as good an option as anyone that we can pick up in free agency. Similarly, as I think about Zach DeCenzo, he's a backup infielder for us at this point. But his arbitration numbers come down so much. I like the fact that he can play second and third. He could even play short in a pinch if we needed him to. Obviously not optimal, but as a utility infielder with a little bit of pop, he's definitely, unlike Williams, proven over the course of his career that he is kind of a bit below average as an offensive player, but still somebody who has been on the team, can hit the ball out of the park on occasion, and has an awful lot of defensive versatility. So kind of leaning towards at least making arbitration offers to both Williams and DeCenzo at this point, and then kind of if we don't love the way things materialize with the roster in either of them, we can always try to trade them away in the offseason. But right now I'm going to try to bring them both back, or at least make arbitration offers to them. And Williams, we're expecting to offer him about 10.8. He, I think, is looking for 12 the last I looked. Yeah, 12 million. So see if maybe we can bring him back at 10.5 million for 1 year. No all-star bonus, although I don't expect he's going to be on the all-star team. Yeah, he's willing to think about 10.5 million. And see what we can do with Mr. DeCenzo, who had just a brutal year for us, batted just 125, but only had 56 at-bats at the major league level, as he was up and down to Omaha and also had some injuries. He certainly was a more reasonable player back in 2028 and even in 2027 with us. 2027, he was an everyday player for us at first base, and he hit 22 homers. So he's not interested in negotiating with us. He must be really, he's angry that he's down in the minors. No, we're going to keep an offer out to him in arbitration. We'll lower it to 3.2 million. I think we still can potentially win with that. Would obviously prefer not to go to an arbitration hearing, but if he's not going to talk to us, we've got no choice. And we've quickly signed a lot of those players: Mackenzie Gore, Ricky Vanasco, Dabovich, Peyton Williams, Tyler Bosma, Spencer Bauer. Spencer Bauer, the fans are excited about. Gordon Crescefo, Will Goebel, and fans are excited about Will Goebel. So looking at the team now, fan interest is up to an 89, which we're pleased with. Definitely opening up some money for free agency and extensions with these guys. And at this point, we'll head to an arbitration hearing with DeCenzo if we need to. And we've now headed into award season. Only one Gold Glove for the Royals this year. Shi-Tong Kim adds a little bit of hardware to his All-Star appearance last year. He got a Gold Glove award at first base this year. Did spend some time playing second base for us towards the end of the season. Looking at his fielding stats, you can see he started 130 games at third and started 24 games at second, most in September, after we brought up Vasquez, the youngster, who slid in at first base, and then Kim took over at second for Ricardo Cabrera. So particularly with the potential for our shortstop Nicky Lopez to be leaving, it's very possible that Kim will be at second base next year, but does have a Gold Glove on his resume now. For the first time in several years, Bobby Witt Jr. did not win the Gold Glove at third base among American leaguers. Got edged out by Nolan Arenado, who has moved to the Twins. Kind of just trying to clear the decks on some players with no option years left, notably Randy Rodriguez and Will Taylor, as well as a few other minor league prospects, none of whom are too particularly important to us. Trying to get Jordan Groshans from the White Sox. would be a utility infielder for us. Has a kind of average-ish type of bat, can play third, can play short, could certainly be trained up to play second and first, and he could play a credible left or right field too. So it would just be a interesting utility player to have. The issue is that they've signed him to this contract through age 32, making $7.2 million a year the last couple years. That's way more than I'd like to be paying a guy like this. We've got an agreement for them to keep 50% of his salary that they will agree to. We are actually going to push it up to 70% and just see what they think of that. If we're able to bring him on board and they'll keep 70% of his salary for that prospect package, and as you can see, we are adding in a little bit of the cash that we just picked up in our previous trade to sweeten it for them a little bit. That could allow us to potentially move on from Zach DeCenzo and maybe see what, if anything, we can get for him in trade before we go through the arbitration hearing with them. So I don't think they're going to agree to this with them keeping an extra 20%, but we'll submit the offer and see what happens. Perhaps not surprisingly, Chicago didn't go for the trade we offered them when we wanted them to keep 70% of Grosjean's salary. So back to the drawing board as far as what we want to do with Randy Rodriguez and Will Taylor. Would like to try to get a little bit of value for those two guys before just letting them go, but we'll see if we can get anything. And we did put together a deal pretty similar to the original one that Chicago accepted, with them retaining 60% of Grosjean's salary. So I think that means that Zach DeCenzo may not be coming back. We may look to see what we can pick up for him in trade. And it also means that we're probably not going to be going crazy looking for a shortstop. Not that we would want to be playing Grosjean's there every day. But if we move Bobby Witt Jr. over to start with Grosjean's, Cabrera, and Kin, we do have several people who could play shortstop for us in a pinch at least a respectable level. So we are going to go ahead and do this trade where we're sending away Rodriguez, Taylor, Lodice, Baca, and Davis Diaz, along with some cash to get Grosjean's in return. So with the addition of Grosjean's, got to figure out what to do with DeCenzo. See if he's willing to talk to us. The one thing he does have going for us is that he does have an option year left, so we can send him to the minors and then kind of have him as an insurance policy. Pretty expensive insurance policy at potentially, $3.2, $3.3 million. I think we're going to at least shop him. I'm not expecting there to be much, if any, value for him, but at least see if we have any options available. Actually, there are a lot of options, so maybe we can come up with something. You can see a lot of expensive players with bad contracts, but perhaps there's someone interesting who's not going to be making much money that we can at least extract a little value out of DeCenzo before moving on from him. There's one really interesting offer for DeCenzo, Fabrizio Valera from the Brewers, who was actually an all-star this past season. His first full year in the majors had 34 homers and 90 ribbies while batting .261. I don't think he's going to be that good of an offensive player going forward, but maybe he is. But he's got 2 option years left. He's making the major league minimum because he's only been up a year plus. With the fact that we've moved on from Stephen Paulini, it's not inconceivable that Valera could be our 4th or 5th outfielder this coming season. And even if he's not, it would be a big demotion from him to go from being an all-star to the minors, but we do have the option to send him down there. So save some money and potentially get a better player than DeCenzo. He can't play the infield like DeCenzo, so that's a little I won't say disappointing. He's just not an infielder, but I think he's a better bat. He's younger and he costs less money, so we'll see if we can get anything more out of them than just him. But I think Zach DeCenzo's time with the Royals is finally coming to a merciful end. And we were able to get the Brewers to even throw in a little bit of cash with Valera. They, must like DeCenzo's defensive versatility, which I've always liked, good personality and a decent bat. And I don't know that Fabrizio Valera is going to hit 34 homers every year. It seems like that's a little bit of a mirage, but we're willing to take a flyer on him, particularly given that he's got 2 option years left. So we are going to move on from Zach DeCenzo and bring on Fabrizio Valera to the Royals. And with that trade, let's see, we've got no arbitration eligible players yet. We're not going to offer any of our free agents qualifying offers. So we're kind of ready to go for arbitration. And you can see with getting rid of DeCenzo, getting rid of some $700,000 a year players off of the major league roster, like we did with the trades with Rodriguez and Taylor. We've got a little bit of money to spend now in free agency if we want, and I don't think we have any gaping holes, but we're obviously always looking to improve the team, and we certainly could open up even a little bit of more money if we were to change the scouting or development budgets a little lower. So we've got the opportunity to not be a major player in free agency, but to certainly add some players on the edges of the roster that could help us. And if we end up deciding we want to bring back Nicky Lopez at short, we've certainly got the money to do that also. So I think it's been a relatively productive lead up to arbitration for the Royals at this point. We are going to put Valera onto the 40-man roster, and then we are going to send him to AAA, which he probably won't be thrilled about, but he very well could end up in the majors, as we've talked about. And perhaps not surprisingly, after the disappointing regular season the Royals had, it was a pretty quiet awards season for us, other than the Gold Glove at first base for Kin. No Silver Sluggers for the Royals this year. Rookie of the Year, Will Bryan did finish second in the voting behind Alex Manasseh of Houston. Will Bryan went 4-3 with 1 save for us, 2.40 ERA over 108 and 2/3 innings. So the lefty finally got an opportunity at the age of 30 to play in the majors, and got a little bit of notoriety with his votes. Top AL pitcher, at one point we felt that Caleb Lagerwell was going to be in the mix for the Cy Young Award, and he really kind of faded over the second half of the season and did not get any votes. And no Royals got votes for the Cy Young Award this year. And as far as the AL MVP, no votes for any Royals for AL MVP either. You can see it was definitely a down year for the team. Julio Rodriguez, former Royal of the Yankees, gets the AL MVP award. Top AL pitcher, if you didn't notice, Jurangelo Clintjay of the White Sox, who beat us in the playoffs, had a brilliant season. He's now won back-to-back Cy Young Awards for the White Sox. Top NL pitcher, Jake Weninger of the Brewers, 14-9, 2.82 ERA, 235 strikeouts. And the National League MVP, Fernando Tatis Jr., continues to just have an incredible career for the Padres. You can see he is very well decorated at this point in his career with 5 Most Valuable Player awards and just some crazy offensive seasons. He is on his way at the age of 30 to perhaps being one of the greatest hitters in Major League history. You can see he's got 502 home runs at the age of 30, and he's led the National League in home runs 7 times already. be interesting to see where his career goes over the next decade or so. And we've made it to the beginning of free agency. You can see with all the changes we've made, have about $15 million to potentially spend. So we can definitely be players in free agency and can certainly open up some more money if we mess with our scouting or development budgets. Player development we're actually a little light on right now, so we're going to pop that up a bit, which will make our finances not quite as good, more like $12.5 million to spend now, but no huge holes on the team. Definitely a different team than we have been in the past, with the loss of Roberts and the loss of Rogers, and even moving on from Zach DeCenzo and potentially moving on from Nicky Lopez. Looking at who actually made it to free agency, Guerrero Jr., Matt Olson, and Tim Anderson are kind of the top three among the batters. So it looks like Correa most likely got signed by the Yankees, so he did not make it to free agency. And then looking at the top pitchers, a lot of relievers out there, not too much on the starting pitcher front. We have talked about Joan Adone, or Joan Adone. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce that, but only looking for $1.7 million for a very decent profile as a reliever and someone who could start in a pinch. That may be someone we need to look for. We're also going to need to pick up a catcher. We have moved on from our longtime backup, who, unless he retired, Reese McGuire is a free agent now. Right now, we've obviously got MJ Melendez as our starter, and we will most likely move up Caldera from AAA. But we don't really have a proven catcher who can either become the backup and send Caldera back down to AAA, although I think Caldera is out of options. I should actually look at that before I talk too much about this, because I could be providing some really bad information on Fernando Caldera. Last option year, I think, was this past year. But you can see he certainly profiles as an acceptable backup catcher for us. But if there is a catcher available with some minor league options, Ivan Herrera, out of option years, unfortunately. But we may spend some time trying to find a catcher who could potentially be in AAA for us as kind of an insurance policy for either Melendez or Caldera. And if there's not somebody, is a free agent who fits that profile, could certainly look to make a trade for kind of a 4A type catcher. So we will be focused on those kind of decisions in our next episode. But I think it's been a productive start to the off season. I think it was a productive arbitration period for the Royals. Fan interest is still high, fan loyalty is still good, and we do have some money to spend, despite the fact that our budget was cut back by $8 million with the moving on from the expensive contracts of Austin Roberts and Trevor Rogers already this offseason. But our pitching has been so good over the years. Clearly the loss of those two will have an impact, but I think that we can still be a well above average pitching staff next year, and hopefully deliver a little more offense and get these Royals back in the playoffs. So we'll see what we can do in free agency and potentially trades over the next couple of months to help get the Royals back to being a playoff team in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.